A story of political violence in America. I want to get to it quickly, and then I'm going to get to J.D. Vance and the choice for VP and the RNC. But it's hard to get away from the shadow of what happened on Saturday. And it's fascinating to see the right in America point the finger at the Democrats and the left for producing the kind of environment that gave rise to and gives rise to the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. This from all the online communities that the far right inhabits. They should be hung in the streets, one person wrote, of Democrats, the media, and others. War now, another one wrote. I guess they really do want war, a member of the pro-Trump message board known as the Donald wrote on Saturday night. Many other members of the message board, which played a significant role in coordinating activities leading up to the Capitol riot, for example, on January 6th, agreed. Let's give it to them, one person wrote. Another said, I'm ready. This is my last damn straw. Civil effing war, they wrote. Of course, they wrote the actual word. I'm ready to be done with this effing S from Democrats. This article and these pieces and much of this comes from Wired magazine, by the way, just if you're wondering my source on this. They've been trying to take this guy out since he's been in office. Too bad for them, they missed. Probably their only shot at this failed attempt because they're about to really see what happens when you poke the bear far too long. F the DNC, F the rhinos, F the FEDs, and F the MSM. They should all be hung in the streets.
I don't know what all those stand for.
I don't know what FED stands for, Albert. What does that stand for?
Feds, maybe? The Fed?
Oh, the feds. Is that what he means? Probably. Okay.
I don't know. They were mad at the federal government.
Well, rhinos, Republican in name only,
Right.
and so feds is feds, and MSM is mainstream media, and DNC is,
Got it.
Democratic National Committee.
Okay.
War now. They don't want to live and let live. We need to finish what should have been done after the Civil War. Eradicate and eliminate all Democrats and anyone who even thinks about being a Democrat. So you really have in the right and in the message boards of the right. And as I say, many of these message boards were used in the ramp up to January 6th. You have a cauldron of hate and a kind of toxicity that is undeniable. You do not find something like this in the numbers you see. You don't find it on the left. Now, the left has its own radical and radicalized group, but it just pales in comparison to the power of the right. And so as we segue into we should turn down the rhetoric and we should just turn down the flames and the calls to taking to the streets, you have to realize the facts really suggest it's coming for the most part from one side. I mean, I think it's kind of quaint that Lester Holt asked Joe Biden if he thought that his remarks to a group of donors where he said, we have to put a bullseye on Donald Trump, if he thought that led to the assassination attempt on the president or the former president. I mean, the guy who attacked the former president, Donald Trump, came from a MAGA-loving family. He was a registered Republican. He was a gun nut. They had 25 other guns they discovered in his house. He borrowed his dad's AR-15, the same rifle that Democrats have tried to get outlawed. Don't tell me that, both sides really have to turn down the... Really? They had Trump lawn signs on his lawn, the house where he grew up, where he was still living with his folks. Don't try to paint him as some radical lefty. I'm not doing anything but giving you the absolute facts. And then finally, I'll remind you about what Donald Trump said when he was calling on his Second Amendment people. Do you remember that? Because it was a while ago. It was when Hillary Clinton was running against Donald Trump. He suggested that his, quote, Second Amendment people could move against Hillary Clinton. He said it. New York Times, August 9th, 2016. Donald Trump suggests Second Amendment people could act against Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump on Tuesday appeared to raise the possibility that gun rights supporters could take matters into their own hands if Hillary Clinton is elected president and appoints judges who favor stricter gun control measures. Repeating his contention that Mrs. Clinton wanted to abolish the right to bear arms, this is again, one of the overstatements that is often made in Trump land. Mr. Trump warned at a rally that it would be, quote, a horrible day if Mrs. Clinton were elected and got to appoint a tie-breaking Supreme Court justice. If she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks, Trump said. As the crowd began to boo, he quickly added, although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is. I don't know. So don't tell me that the rhetoric is coming from both sides of the aisle. It's not. Play a little bit of this Lester Holt thing, and then I'll get into J.D. Vance and the RNC. With the Lester Holt sit down with Joe Biden was unedited, and here's a little bit of it right out of the chute.
Spoke to Mr. Trump afterward. Can you give me a sense of that conversation?
Very cordial. I told him how concerned I was and wanted to make sure I knew how he was actually doing. He sounded good. He said he was fine. And he thanked me for calling him. I told him he was literally in the prayers of Jill and me. And I hope his whole family was weathering this.
You were in Delaware when this happened. What was your first reaction?
My first reaction was, my God, look, there's so much violence now, the way we talk about it. I mean, the whole notion that there is this, there's no place at all for violence in politics in America. None, zero. And we've reached a point where it's become too commonplace, not assassinations, but to talk about it. For example, the January 6th, the attack on the Capitol. Lester, I got in this race early on in 2020 for the 2020 race. I wasn't going to run again because I lost my son. I didn't feel it. And until I watched what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. Those folks coming out of the woods with torches, carrying swastikas, singing the same Nazi bile. It was accompanied by this Ku Klux Klan, and a young woman was killed. And I was a bystander. And the then president was asked, what do you think? He said, they're very fine people on both sides. Not fine people on both sides. No excuse, zero.
Well, let's talk about the conversation this has started, and it's really about language, what we say out loud, and the consequences of those. You called your opponent an existential threat on a call a week ago. You said it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. There's some dispute about the context, but I think you appreciate that.
I didn't say crosshairs. I was talking about focus on. Look, the truth of the matter was, what I guess I was talking about at the time was there's very little focus on Trump's agenda.
Yeah, the term was bullseye.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him. Focus on what he's doing. Focus on his policies. Focus on the number of lies he told in the debate. Focus. I mean, there's a whole range of things that, look, I'm not the guy that said, I want to be a dictator on day one. I'm not the guy that refused to accept the outcome of the election. I'm not the guy who said that one would accept the outcome of this election automatically. You can't only love your country when you win. And so the focus was on what he's saying. And I mean, the idea.
But have you taken a step back and done a little soul searching on things that you may have said that could incite people who are not balanced?
Well, I don't think, look, how do you talk about the threat to democracy, which is real, when a president says things like he says? Do you just not say anything because it may incite somebody? Look, I've not engaged in that rhetoric. Now, my opponent is engaged in that rhetoric. He talks about there'll be a bloodbath if he loses, talking about how he's going to forgive all the, actually, I guess, suspend the sentences of all those who were arrested and sentenced to go to jail because of what happened in the Capitol. I'm not out there making fun of, like, remember the picture of Donald Trump when Nancy Pelosi's husband was hit with a hammer, joking about it.
This doesn't sound like you're turning down the heat, though. You've talked about
No. Look, what I'm turning down, we have to stop.
Okay, that's good. It's good, Albert. I think Holt is actually on really thin ice here. I don't understand. I mean, I get that that's kind of their coin of the realm, is to somehow be tough as an interviewer and to be sort of dogged. But, I mean, dude, you can't be serious. I mean, what I thought Biden did, I mean, sadly, he does it in that halting senior citizen way that we all,
he did it.
Yeah, but he did it. He said, "Hey, I'm not the guy calling for a bloodbath in the streets. I'm not the guy inciting my followers to this kind of thing." I thought it was again, Biden is only capable of being so good, but I thought he was correct on the merits. And the reality is that Holt is just leaning in, I think, as I say, on thin ice. I mean, you can't be serious. There is mountains and mountains and mountains of evidence of the way that violence is being stoked on the right and being stoked by Trump. And somehow you're riding President Biden like a rented mule. I don't know. I mean, now I get it. That's kind of what the interview is. But by the same token, I think, as I say, Holt was really drawing thin there. So,
I was impressed by President Biden in that interview. I mean, he held his own and he did it with class. One of the things I'll take away from it was, and I think this will go down in some type of, how they have famous quotes from presidents. You can't only love America when you win.
Right.
I love that quote. I love it. It's so true and said with such brevity, but such power. I loved it.
Yeah. I think that you're right. That pretty much does say it. So that was the situation. The interview, I doubt it was seen by a ton of people. It was competing with other noise, the RNC, and just the news cycle itself, and the voracious appetite that the news cycle has for anything to happen. And the J.D. Vance appointment was added to that news cycle. So again, I just don't know to what extent it was actually ingested by many people, but there's a little piece of it. So
The Mark Thompson Show.
And I mentioned the J.D. Vance thing. And by the way, just before I completely get away from the shooting, or the attempted shooting. I guess it was a shooting, and somebody lost their life. And by the way, on that, it's fascinating to me that Biden called the family of the fallen firefighter, the guy who died at that rally, okay? Trump has not called. Biden did call. But here's the twist. The widow of the fallen firefighter, the man who was killed at the Trump rally, wouldn't take Biden's call.
She said her husband wouldn't have liked it.
I didn't talk to Biden. I didn't want to talk to him, she said. My husband was a devout Republican, and he would not have wanted me to talk to him. Mm-hmm. I don't have any ill will toward Joe Biden. I'm not one of those people that gets involved in politics. I support Trump. That's who I'm voting for, but I don't have ill will toward Biden. He didn't do anything to my husband. A 20-year-old despicable kid did. So there's that.
But meanwhile, Trump hasn't reached out to that family. The family of someone who supported them enough to attend rallies, who gave their life to attend a rally. I mean, does that sound right to you? Because it's really not presidential not to call and express your condolences.
By the way, the idea somehow that my husband was a devout Republican and he wouldn't want me to take the call from Biden, that's tortured, man. Really? Is that where we are? Mm-hmm. I mean, look, if Donald Trump called me tomorrow and said, hey, I heard about the loss of your dad, and I just want to call you and tell you, I would not say, I'm not taking the call from Donald Trump. I would speak to Donald Trump as a human being, or as a, maybe he's faking it. It's not sincere, whatever. It's still a gesture, and I would honor the gesture by picking up the phone. So it's an odd thing that he's a devout Republican. All right, so what? I mean, there are Republicans and Democrats working alongside each other all the time on Capitol Hill. But it's this cartoonish version of things now that has turned it into a religion. So, I mean, she really says he's a devout Republican, the way you say he's a devout fill in the blank Muslim, Catholic, Jew, whatever it might be.
As if a political party is a religion.
Thank you. That's it. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.